button. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. I think it's an exciting topic that we have on hand. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce that we have the interpretation function today, which allows you to listen in on the webinar in either in English or in Spanish. So I wanted to draw your attention to the bottom of your Zoom bar, and then there you'll be able to see the globe button on the bottom right, and then you click that, and then you can select the language that you want to listen to the webinar in. And today we have available English or Spanish. So yeah, we hope to be able to do this more in future webinars as well. So so make sure you select either English or Spanish. And then a big thank you to Jake here, who's doing the live interpretation for us. Jake, I don't know if you want to explain that in Spanish as well too for anyone on the call, or maybe Nehi. I don't know if you would like to. I think Jake is already in the English.
Sure, I can do it. Para todas las personas que están conectadas hoy y que nos escuchan en español, en la parte de abajo a mano derecha hay un botón que se llama Interpretation o interpretación. Y pueden hacer clic allí y escoger el lenguaje español para poder escuchar la traducción en vivo.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Nehi. So again, we're very happy to get started with the webinar. And today, we'll explore how to use technology to build relationships. The pandemic over the last couple of years has brought incredible challenges that are very stressful. At the same time, it's also opened up opportunities to think about how to use technology as a means to connect. And this also then brings about the question of how to use it in an intentional way to build relationships. So we want to use this time and space today to share ground up real experiences of organizations that have and how they have approached the use of technology. So we're very honored and happy to have today Tracey Chambers from the GROW organization in South Africa, who will be sharing their experience building an app that connects the multiple elements of their ECD programming. And we also have Maria Adelaida Lopez and Nehi Quintero from the AO2 organization in Colombia to share their journey in integrating technology into how they're building relationships. So at the end of, they'll each get a chance to present and share the work. And then after each of their presentation, we'll have time for questions and discussion. So make sure you keep an ear out. And then if you have any questions, we will be using the Google Jamboard that I have on my shared screen right now. And then we'll use that to collect your questions and to be able to group them as well. So be sure to go to the link to post your questions. I'm just putting it into the chat now. And then when we get to we'll start with the GROW presentation, go to the third frame of the Google Jamboard. And then you can post your questions, use the sticky note button on the left-hand side. So you can just click this, type your question here, and then hit enter, and then click outside the frame. And then you can move your sticky around. And then so when we start with GROW, go to the third frame, and then we'll move to AO2 on the fourth frame when we and later on in this webinar. So I will pause there and I will stop sharing, and then I will pass it over to Ray to introduce the GROW team, and we'll get started then.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Sorry, it took me a while to get my screen back up. I'm Ray Gordeski. I'm based in Toronto, so I have snow on the ground as well, though it's above zero at the moment. I have the pleasure and honor of introducing Tracey Chambers. Now, I would love to do this if I was in a room. I would see all of you, but maybe you could just, those of you who know how to use different reactions, you might just use the reaction button on this. Tracey is chartered accountant, And when I saw that, I asked myself, well, how many others are chartered accountants? So if you could use the reaction button, which is just to the left of the interpretation button, put a hand up if you've been a chartered accountant in your life. My bet is few. Tracy, where's yours? Yeah. All right. So I first met Tracey, I believe it was in Toronto, at a workshop we were having for innovators. And I was sitting in we had small group presentations of the innovation. And I was just so, well, gobsmacked. I don't know how you're going to translate that, Jake. Yes, we should introduce Jake, by the way. Jake Breedlove is our interpreter here, and he's been doing a great job of work we've been doing with AIO2 for Spanish and English. So that's why we've invited him here to translate from Spanish or into English or into Spanish, depending on who is speaking. Again, Tracey is the head of Grow, and I was gobsmacked because they are doing the most amazing stuff with technology. But one of the things I was most impressed with was, in order to improve early childhood development, they were really looking at one of the ways we could not only improve early childhood development, but give skills to women who are providing informal childcare, get them more formalized and so on, and then do this all through technology. It's just amazing. And it's only improved over the years. So without further talking from me, I'd like to introduce Tracey Chambers. Tracey.
Great. Hi, thanks, Ray. I hope my signal's good enough, and we're not in our usual offices. We're actually away at our annual conference. So I've just left our conference venue to set up. Can everybody hear me properly? Great. So thank you to everyone for being here. And this definitely, and of course, there's going to be noise in the background just as I start speaking. Can you just hold on 1 second? Hold on 1 second. Not going to be able to hear me. I'm not going to be able to control the environment too well. First of all, thank you for your time. We know everybody's really busy in this space, and for your interest in this topic. I think the more that we collaborate, I think the better for the sector worldwide. Technology is a very complicated subject. We fell into it by accident, and we thought it was a solution. But I think the lessons that we've learned, I'm hoping you will take those, not make those same mistakes, and take those lessons as you choose to go on your own technology journey. I think I've looked at a lot of the questions, and I'm not going to be able to answer them all. We're coming from, essentially this is a case study. It's our perspective. We don't profess to have all the answers. We're still learning. We are still making mistakes. And our solution is not an EdTech solution, so it's not in the hands of children. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. And it is not, I would say, a last mile solution. I'll explain where Grow fits in and where we work as well. So just to manage expectations for those that are on the call. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we'll just swap to that. Can you see that now? You can see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay. So as Ray said, I founded an organization in 2014, my second social enterprise called Grow Educare Centers, out as a project of my first social enterprise, which works with unemployed mothers to help them start businesses. And we've been chipping away at this for 7 years, and really building a puzzle. As we started to understand the ecosystem of early learning, specifically in South Africa, that is where we are focused. we started to really understand what women who operate ECDs as businesses mostly need to run what we call 5-star early learning in every neighborhood that unlocks human potential. And so through our vision statement, you'll see we are about quality. We're uncompromising on our quality statement. We believe that every single child deserves quality, and we have to find a way to do that at scale. We can't compromise on that because we need scale. Unlocking human potential is really about the potential of the child, obviously, but we're also talking about the potential of the teacher, the potential of the business owner, and the potential of the parent, because they're all impacting the ecosystem of the child. So we need to work at a multidimensional approach. One thing that is different about our model to some models out there is that we believe in South Africa, like many countries that I've come across, the early learning space is a private sector. It is largely operations started by women who live in the community in which they operate the center, and it could start from their home and remain in their home, or their home becomes the entire center, or they go on to find rent premises and perhaps even purpose-built premises. But what we've seen over the years is that if you want a sustainable 5-star early learning center, you have to take care of the business as much as you take care of the teaching. Is that if the business isn't sound, in other words, if it doesn't break even, we're not talking about highly profitable businesses, we're talking about businesses that can afford to pay teachers minimum wage, which unfortunately in South Africa is not the norm, and businesses that can afford to invest in resources, maintenance to sustain the early learning environment. And most of the centers in South Africa are totally dependent on parents paying fees to do that. And we see that every single one of those elements, if you don't have enough money to pay teachers, it doesn't matter how much you train teachers, tomorrow you'll come, it will be a different teacher because that teacher's moved for 50 Rand. And the learning resources will not be well looked after, and you'll come and the resources you put down, if they're low quality and haven't been looked after and haven't been replenished, will no longer be there, and you'll be back to square one, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So our solution really talks about the ecosystem of the early learning business and the support technology to support it to run a system end to end. So this is just our current theory of change map. And really, I've talked about our vision and our mission statement. We believe in providing ECD owners, teachers with a complete recipe, absolutely everything they need to run a 5-star center, which talks to training, mentorship, curriculum, a community of practice, resources. We spend a lot of time on measurement. And the two new elements we've added recently is technology and access to low-cost finance, so that even women from low-income centers can find finance to invest in their centers. Our primary focus is through the ECD owner, and she is our vehicle to get to parents and get to teachers. And then we are also now working at a more organization level, not Grow is working with other ECD organizations that are on the same mission as us to basically share our technology and tools with them. And you can just see some of our measurements, key measurements, so you can get a sense of what our impact KPIs are. So we've been doing this for 7 years. We currently have, and we've been using a social franchise approach to this for 7 years, and that's really how Grand Challengers found us. They really liked the packaging, that we had a whole system, and they asked us really, how could we scale this model? And our answer was technology. At the time, we were running around measuring a lot of things. The measurement process was extremely costly, and the quality of the data we had was very poor, because we were relying on without data text. We were asking people to capture things into spreadsheets, and really the data was old and poor by the time we got to it. We also couldn't deploy resources easily. Everything was printed. Every time we wanted to change a page in our daily program, we had to print a whole book. We had to redistribute forms. I was talking about the lengthy learner assessment process, and it was a process of printing forms, delivering them to schools, getting consent from parents, sending reports to parents, getting those back, and you can just imagine the inefficiencies in our system, and therefore that prevented us to go to scale. So in 2019, we embarked on trying to develop this technology. The first thing we did was to look for something out there. We assumed this can't be a unique problem to us. The business of early learning is worldwide, that somebody must have solved for this. And we really couldn't find anything that was a one-stop shop. We could find lots of subsystems that would require, we worked out she might have to have 20 apps on her phone in order to run her business using technology. We couldn't find anything that was appropriate for our target market. Most systems assume that a center owner or teacher or parent have a computer. And we couldn't find, I think those are the two main things. And we wanted it to be simple, but not just one dimensional. And these were the problems that we were solving for. So we were running, as I said, a social franchise model at the time, and I'll talk to you about how that's evolving. And we had all of these challenges, and those are the pain points that we were solving for, and we wanted to solve it for multiple stakeholders. So what were the ECD owners' pain points as the business person, the administrator? Sometimes she teaches, sometimes she doesn't. The teacher who's teaching, obviously, learners, who doesn't have access to resources. She doesn't have a computer to go and Google. She doesn't have a printer. She doesn't know how to assess learners. She's struggling with parent engagement, how to engage parents on their children's learning journey and give them access to resources to stimulate the learning at home. And then us as an organization, we were struggling with some of the things that I mentioned earlier. And so we embarked on this process, and I'm going to share with you mainly lessons learned from this process. We embarked on a custom-built, primarily mobile application. It does have a web component to it that was developed by us, by a software development house. And once it was a very, very painful process. And I'd love to hear from others in the group who, if they haven't had a painful process. I think developing technology is a very painful process. But once we came out the other end, and there were times we weren't sure we would come out the other end, and thanks to Grand Challenges and their support, we did come out the other end. We realized we had a tool that was not only going to serve Grow and our franchise audience, but actually that we had a tool, that we had a responsibility, and many of the assets that we put into this tool, that we almost had a responsibility to share this tool, because if we couldn't find it, others, it didn't exist in the format that others needed it. And as we started to speak to ECD organizations, they said to us, please, can't we have this too? As we started to speak to teachers and ECD owners that weren't part of our franchise network, they said, please, can we have this too? And so we made a very big strategic shift in March 2020. We decided to make this tool essentially open source, because we need to reach more ECDs faster. We need to stop reinventing the wheel. Grow has, of course, everybody's got incredible assets. How do we bring them together in a single tool, rather than create complete confusion for an ECD owner who's got to remember where these things were and where she learned about them? We all know the information age is overwhelming. How do we bring them all together into a single tool? We need to build partnerships to reach scale. We need sector-wide measures for quality and impact standards. And the only way we're going to get that is if we use one tool. And we can agree on, for example, a specific set of learner assessment standards. And then we can actually use that data to interrogate what works and what doesn't work within programs. We need to become a more data-driven sector. The South African sector is not data-driven. We do a census once every 5 or 6 years, And that is about the data we have on a sector at any point in time. And we need to reduce, which is really where the low impact finance comes, and the data enables us to do that. A sector that is not reliant entirely on donor funds, and how can we get investors to invest in ECDs. So essentially where we landed in March 22 is we made the app free to all. Any ECD owner in South Africa can use the app. Any ECD support organization in South Africa can use the app, and we hope in time that will be global, for free, and it contains 95% of the assets that we've created for the business of ECD, which includes teaching assets, so that nobody else has to reinvent them. Practical things like all the registration requirements, the policy requirements, the assessment tools are all available free. And then we twin that through a phased approach with face-to-face training. All our training is also available online. But what we have learned is that you cannot do the tool itself is not the silver bullet. The tool needs to be part of an ecosystem, and that you will never replace that face-to-face professional development through a coaching type framework entirely. And we've now twinned that with a hybrid approach. And essentially we now on a more journeyed approach. We've shifted our model from straight to franchising to a more journeyed approach. We call it our 5 Steps to 5-Star program, where we are deploying, hopefully we're going to be deploying most of our assets to anybody everywhere. It's given us a complete national footprint. We're no longer reliant on having a presence in offices, to partnering with others, but having common tools and a common language and a common data set. So this, I'm not going to go into this in any more detail, but this just shows you our phased approach. We start with technology and tools. We then introduce the Grow very detailed daily program and curriculum, which is available on the app, as well as our step 2 phase with an investment in high quality educational equipment. We then move to supporting her through, helping her through the compliance and the registration process, as well as understanding how her business can be financially sustainable. And that really all leads to a set of common standards that we all agree are 5-star standards that we could all measure ourselves against, self-assessment, so that we know what we need to improve. And the Grow branding is the ultimate objective, although not the objective for everybody anymore. Centers can go as far or as fast or as slow as they want, and they can go as far or as many steps up the ladder. And we're also looking at the tool that we don't have now, but it's coming soon. We'll be able to interface different ECD organizations' curriculum where there's uniqueness, and here people have specifically developed certain tools that they feel they want their organization, their ECDs to have. Those will be able to be deployed through this technology. So the app that is in the hands of the ECD owner is, we've gone with the African theme of animals, the safari type theme. And the app that is in the hands of the ECD owner is called the Giraffe app. And as you can see, it is a one-stop shop. So it helps her do all the administration for her center around learners, staff, compliance and reporting. It helps her do finances. It helps her look at the performance of or the development of learners, the competency of teachers, how her business is performing, and the 5-star goals that we spoke about. It helps her with communication. It provides her with access to online training, and then at the bottom, a whole set of additional tools and resources that she can access at any given time. The app is actually split into 3 apps, but the apps in the hands of the teachers and the parents are actually just a subset. In other words, we're solving for all those stakeholders in the system. The teacher app and the parent app is just a subset of the comprehensive ECD app, where we are just presenting the information that those stakeholders need to have. And so what we're doing here really is total transparency a learner is seen right throughout the system, all the way to that learner's report landing in the hands of the parents. And also trying to triangulate data so that we make sure that there is data integrity. So this technology, we launched it, as I said, to everybody free in March 2020. And, it's hard to set something free that you toiled and struggled and got a lot of gray hairs over, and say, well, how do, I have to make money out of this, and we have to find a financial sustainability strategy. And I'm an accountant, so there's even more pressure to do that. But somehow we had this intuition that we needed to set it free. And the minute we'd set it free, what happened is corporate South Africa heard about this. And one of the largest financial services institutions shortly thereafter approached us. And we've spent the last 9 months negotiating a shared value partnership, because the crux with technology is that you're going to hear from me in my lessons learned that we are not a tech company. And once your software developer has developed it, they don't want to be a tech company supporting you. They want to move on to the next innovation and the next paying client. So you often get stuck holding the baby. And that baby needs to be nurtured. And that baby is expensive to maintain because it can't stand still. And so we were faced with a decision. Do we become a tech company? Do we become a tech company and a company focused on the holistic ecosystem of ECD? What does it mean for our organizational structure and direction? And we were fortunate that we were approached by Old Mutual financial services business, who were very interested in the business of ECD. And over a process of 9 months, we've negotiated the shared value contract. It went live in October. It's still early days. I'm sure I'll be back on a webinar in a year's time, sharing lessons learned about shared value partnerships. And it is a marriage. So we're going to learn a lot about working with corporate South Africa. Luckily, I've done this in my previous social enterprise where we work a lot. Our model is built on a shared value partnership. So hopefully we've built some of those. Essentially, we've got a good anti-nuptial contract, when you put it that way. And it takes a village to raise a child and an ecosystem to scale and into innovation. And it's very hard to do that alone. And you're only going to be able to do that when you have big partners. And that's one thing we've realized, that we kind of have to share to grow. So just reflections on lesson learned, and this my second last slide, is I wanted to reflect on things that I wish I'd done better at the beginning, which is the red. And essentially, I'm going to just talk quickly to each of them. Really planning. So often, I think it took us nearly a year to win the Grand Challenges contract. And you sort of stuck in limbo, like you don't want to do too much work, because what happens if you don't? Then you just, wasted time and energy. And then when you get a grant, then you have to get straight into delivery mode. And there are tight timelines. And we skip over too much of the planning phase. You need to spend about 30% of your project time in the planning phase. You need to clearly understand the tech, all the acronyms in the tech development space. Agile project management is my favorite word, and I always use a joke. The only thing agile about the project management methodology was the timeline and the budget. And you need to understand how this new world of software development works. You need to be 100% clear on your scope. What do you want this technology to do, and what don't you want it to do? And the fact that it can do it doesn't mean it must do it. Contracting, I agonized over the contract. And at one point, I nearly walked away from contracting because, very often it's a open-ended budget. And I was had sleepless nights, and I went back to the software developer and I said, I could only do this on a fixed price basis. And thank God I did, because whatever budget you have, at least times it by 2, I would say times it by 3, and maybe you'll be safe. Resourcing, make sure, do not abdicate responsibility for this technology to an outsourced partner. It's yours. You're the only one who will know how best to do it. They can add value. Make sure you commit full-time resources and make sure you commit your best resources to that, and own your own design process by having quality business analysts part of that process. And then choose your software developers very, very, very carefully. Spend time doing that. Don't rush it. Make sure you get solid references that are from real people.
I think
Did we lose contact?
looks like it.
I can't tell whether Tracey, she's frozen.
I think we luckily we heard the bulk of her
Yeah.
story. I wonder, Maria Adelaida and Nehi, maybe Ray, should we move to their comments? And if we
Yeah,
do, then it'll
I think so. I was going to let Tracey know, but Maria Adelaida, Nehi, comments, questions from what you've heard before you give your own presentation, and then we'll turn to others here with questions, comments.
Thank you, Ray. And first of all, thank you for having us here, for giving us this opportunity to engage in this interesting conversation and to share with all of you, as Tracey just did, our experience. I am very, very glad also to see here among the public some of our members of our family in IO2. So thank you them also for being here. And thank you, Jasmine, for making available the Spanish translation, which is very, very generous and kind of you. We have met Tracey in the past, and we have crossed paths, engaged in also different conversations. Tracey and the Grow learning community has been quite an inspiration for IO2. We've been having the opportunity to just go deep down into all this that she shared. It's amazing how in such a short time they've been able to develop big, profound services, technological ones for their not only customers, but for their communities, and involved, different stakeholders on that. I don't know if Tracey is already here, but if you would like to comment before we know if we can ask Tracey some questions. Neji, would you like to comment on something?
Just let me say, Tracey's lost power.
Okay.
I don't know if you're back.
I'm back.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Okay. So Tracey, just to let you know where we are, we've got about 5 minutes, and we'd like to also hear from others in the room about their questions or comments, and maybe get a little exchange going. Not a lot of time, but you were just about you were on lessons learned and so on.
Great. Okay, I'll be 2 more minutes. When you're building your system, make sure that you have built-in checks and balances for data integrity. We didn't think enough about mistakes that individuals can make and logical checks and balances. The customer, the customer is large, because keep the customer at the center of everything you do. Involve them. Instead of coming with a solution, understand the problem very clearly from the customer's perspective. Lots of questions around devices and data challenges. There is no silver bullet on that, but understand what devices and data challenges your customers have. And then, the UX design, the user experience is key. And that needs to be relevant to your target market. And then the things that I wish I'd done more towards the end, or understood that we needed to focus on, is reporting. You know, like this is a very common problem in systems implementation. You only think about your reporting after the fact, rather at the beginning. It should be in the red phase. The post-go live plan and the post-go live budgets. That you need to have a budget. Systems are living things. And the minute your system comes off the production line, it needs to evolve. That is just, you know, the version 1, and there needs to be able to be version 10, version 12. And how have you planned for that going into the future? User support is critical. We had no help desk functionality. We haven't thought about that because we weren't a tech company, and actually developing and that as a capability. And then change management, not just with the individuals that you're trying to drive the impact and the change through, but with your own organization to shift that dynamic. And then this slide really just talks to some of the benefits of having implemented a system. And the primary benefit for us is really about having data and becoming a data-driven organization to drive our monitoring and impact. We now understand where we are doing well and where we're not doing well. We can then deploy resources to the right place. Physically deploying resources, both paper and people and things, is so much easier. We were able to just sign another new partnership because this week, because that partnership required us to have data. And we would have normally had to walk away from that partner because it would have added a load to our load to report on their impact metrics as well. Now we can say yes because we are able to do that with ease. And then the last benefit really has been, now on our next journey, is really to try and use this tool, and we're still at the beginning stage of that, as a tool for systems change within the ECD sector. Really, how can we work together and collaborate rather than compete within the ECD sector, where technology is not the, I always say the technology should be the oracle of technology. All retailers use the same technology. They don't see it as the competitive edge. It's your product and service and the way you deliver things to your customer that gives you the competitive edge. But technology should be standard rather than us reinventing the wheel going forward. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracey. Just amazing, even far beyond what I had imagined you'd gotten to from the last time we spoke. Great. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to AIO2, and I'm going to ask Penny to introduce AIO2, and we will have comments and questions from all of you after AIO2 finishes. Okay. Penny.
Thank you, Ray.
I'm muted. Technology. Right. Thank you very much, Ray. Thank you also, Tracey. That's amazing too, that you managed to do that with all the clattering behind you. And it is an amazing story. We're moving into another amazing story. The Jamboard is open, and I can see that there are questions going there, and we will come to those questions. And if we don't have time, because there are so many, we're going to impose on our teams here to perhaps address them even, you know, after this session is over, and we can manage them somehow that way. So, AIO2, you have been on a great journey. If you open their website and you have a look, you know, at the colors are very reminiscent of the Grow colors. So that's something else you have in common. What I've posted in the chat is a paper that tells your backstory that you guys had published in the Frontiers series. And I urge anybody on this in this meeting to go to that series and to read this story in person. It will give you a lot of details about their Reggio Emilia approach to the work, how they have adapted it into the context in Colombia. and how they've built out from a basis where the accountability and responsibility for the program and the quality for this early childhood rise in quality of the programs has been theirs, and how over time they have shifted that accountability and responsibility to their partners and to others in order to spread out the message and the value of what they're bringing to their communities. So I think in that, the intentionality about using technology has really been part of that spread and part of that journey. In Tracey's, we saw, you know, that's the platform from which they jump off. But I think that it's a slightly different story for you guys. So hand it over to you about what building partnerships and or building relationships with your partners, should I say, where technology has fallen in that. Thanks, guys, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Penny. I am really privileged to be here with Neji, who is our digital director, and among both of us are going to share with you IO2. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. And on behalf of the whole IO2 family, just thank you for being here. And as Tracey said, this is a very, very busy time, so we really appreciate it. IO2 is, as Tracey, we really share many, many things. It's a social enterprise that aims to transform communities in an innovative and sustainable way by developing the full potential of children. And in May 2020, we created the digital direction with the objective of scaling the impact of our educational model by sharing with millions of families and practitioners around the world. And to be able to do this, we launched the online platform aiming to articulate the different actors in early childhood ecosystem. As Tracey, we were very, very much curious and trying to understand what were the problems of the early childhood ecosystem that we could reach through the digital language. And I am very grateful to say that today we have more than 13,000 users and we have impacted more than 45,000 children. So the digital platform is integrated into our comprehensive innovative business, and it provides different media, different channels to reach teachers, leaders, families, and through all this community of practice, to be able to share the vision of early childhood, the vision of quality, the vision of learning, and to be able to unite forces towards improving the early childhood ecosystem in order to achieve lasting systemic changes. So we directly operate right now 21 ECD centers in diverse regions, municipalities of Colombia. And to do so, we have developed the educational model, which is very contemporary and also integrates the whole curriculum, which is very open. And through the longitudinal study, we have demonstrated that children after 8 months are able, or we with them, were able to say, yes, we can close the developmental gap between children, low income and high income families. Under this model, we have impacted around 25 children, 48,000 parents and 6,000 educators. And in 2016, we decided that to really have systemic change, we could not keep working only through the direct operation, but that we wanted to share our knowledge and experience with others and reach more children, not only in Colombia, but around the world. We then started accompanied other early childhood organizations, teachers, educational leaders, and learning with them, supporting them to improve their daily practices. And in 2021, we formalized the consulting and special projects business line, through which since 2015, we have impacted around 392,000 children, 741,000 parents, and 16,000 educators. All this is immersed in a very, very robust advocacy strategy where our purpose is to mobilize, as Tracey is also doing, to mobilize different actors around what is really important for the early childhood education, what is needed for innovation, for seeking to improve public policy and ensuring that different stakeholders are aware of the importance of education, of the early childhood culture, and mostly the importance of investing in children under 5 years of age. So this, for example, what you can see here is how this system is really interconnected, and it is like that because of the benefits of the different technologies. We have, for example, the enterprise resource planning and monitoring system, which initially was just to help the operation run. But today, it really helps by generating support, by, as Tracey, you also said, giving us data that will inform what is really necessary to do to improve our practice, to be coherent and clear in all our different processes. Also supports information for our consultancies, for the network, for all the content, and for example, to strengthen training and also the educational model that is implemented in the centers. And Connect2, for example, Neji will talk a little bit more about this, gives us information about the developmental processes of children. And through our children, then we can know what the contents for the digital platform or for the consultancies are important to really look out. So, Neji, I will give the word to you.
Thank you, Maria. So our journey embracing technology really started in 2012, where we were operating 16 centers, and there was a clear need for us, as interest as we are in learning how our educational model is really impacting children's development. We were really in the need to have the information of children's, for every child, development. And all the information was, just as Tracey mentioned as well, the data was very weak. We had a lot of Excel spreadsheets as well. We had a lot of different forms and formats in different computers for different people. And so, of course, we needed to centralize all this. And so there was this significant need that we needed to solve. And we decided to develop our own software. It was customized to keep track on children's development. So teachers will enter the data that was needed. And then with that data, we were able to not only follow up the development of every child, but also to compare that development within their group, for example, for every child, and also with other children from the same age from other centers in AIO2. So that gave us a lot of important data to continue improving our experience, our educational experience. This was, of course, a great innovation for us, and as important as it was very challenging as well, mainly because, of course, in order for us to use this system, there was a need for connectivity. Most of our centers are located in rural areas where connectivity is not necessarily very good. And so teachers will have the challenge of really entering the data. So for example, in the center, the only place where connectivity will be good enough will be the office. And so teachers will have to first do their own observations by hand in a piece of paper, and then take some extra time to enter that information in the system. So that was a big challenge. Also, we found ourselves with teachers who didn't necessarily knew a lot of, or they were not necessarily literate in digital languages. So they were having problems even with basic things such as turning on computers, and getting into the system was, of course, another challenge for them. So that required a lot of effort from our team to train those teachers and to really help them understand the tool and how the tool will also make easier the job for them once they get to use it as the tool was meant to be used. Then after that, in 2015, we were operating 29 centers. And so, of course, processes such as accounting, purchases, hiring, administrative process we needed for the processes to be managed more efficiently. And so instead of this time developing a customized platform or a customized tool, we started looking out for the tools that were out there in the market. We found this ERP, it's called SAP, but this is a enterprise resource planning system, which allowed us to manage all of these different processes in the same system. And so it was easier, and it gave us a lot of reports and data that helped us better understand how we were managing each center, where we could have, for example, saves in the purchase processes. And as well as with the Connect2 platform, of course, there were challenges. There's, I think, Tracey put it up in a very beautiful way. There's always pains in these processes. So our challenges in here had to do, first of all, with gathering all the information that was first in the centers, in, again, different files, different computers, managed in different ways with different information, and get all that information and migrate it to the system. That was the very first challenge that we had. And also adaptation. To be able to have administrative assistants and everybody involved in getting the information in the system manage the tool was also a challenge for us. So it needed a lot of time and effort, again, from our team to be able to teach all the people involved how to manage those systems. Then around 2018, we started thinking that we needed a platform, because we had more than 1,000 teachers in 14 different cities and municipalities in Colombia. And so with our educational model being, as Maria Laida was telling you, a model that we developed on our own, we needed a tool or a way to be able to make sure that teachers were fully understanding the educational model and putting it into practice. And of course, the educational model had all of these books and forms and documents that will give teachers information on how to develop the educational experience, but not necessarily the teachers had the time to go through all of the documents or know every single procedure that there was. So we started to look for a tool for teachers to self-manage their own knowledge and to strengthen their educational practices. And that's how we ended up developing a learning management system, an LMS, that initially had around 1,000 contents in different forms. So videos, podcasts, documents, tips for teachers and also for families to accompany children during their educational process and or in their houses. We wanted for this learning community, or for this learning system, to become a learning community where different actors from the early childhood ecosystem could interact with each other. And that was our main objective. But very easily we realized that the tool that we chose was not necessarily the best tool in order for us to be able to achieve that goal. And again, digital illiteracy was a very big challenge in here, because we would face a lot of teachers who would not even know how to open up an email. So for example, several teachers will register with the same email from one of the teachers in the group. And then they were very excited of knowing visiting and navigating the contents of the free contents of the platform. And also we launched a pilot e-learning course, because this was about the time where the pandemic hit the world. And so we developed a course on how to potentiate the teacher's role from the distance and to give teachers tools to be able to make more engaging experiences through the screens with the children. And so teachers were really very eager in knowing, doing the course, navigating the contents, but they were having a lot of trouble in understanding how to use the platform. And so they easily just quit and didn't come back to the platform. So the engagement was very, very low. And that was, of course, a really big challenge. So we then realized that the goal that we wanted for teachers, not only to be able to access all of the contents that we were giving them, but also to interact with each other, was not going to be able to be met in this specific platform that we had designed. And so there were structural issues. And so we had to go back and decided to do this structuring process where we invited different representatives from each one of our target groups. So there were family members, there were teachers, there were community leaders, there were educational leaders, and of course, people from the AIO2 team. And we all, with the help of an external organization, structured this new platform that we ended up launching on 2021, last year. That's called the AI2 Network, which of course is a much more friendlier and easier platform to navigate. It definitely has different features that allow users to interact with each other. It has more than 13 members right now. Engagement has gone up, really. It still is not in the levels that we would expect it, but this is something that we're working to get there. It has more than 1,700 free content for users to use. It has a e-learning and whole e-learning module where we have not only that pilot course that we launched, but we have 21 courses, and then the AI2 educational certificate, which is like a 120-hour certificate for teachers to really improve their knowledge. And also it has been structured in a way, because we were talking about how technology really affects building interactions with others. So it has built up in a way that we are not only giving this information in forms of videos or documents to read and different formats to the teachers, but we're also inviting them to try and get everything, all the contents that we're giving them to their own practice. So there are workshops that they can do. There are forums where they can interact with other students. There are groups that they can form to talk about a specific challenge that they have or a specific question that they want to answer and talk about that with other people. So it's been an awesome experience. Of course, there has been challenges again. Connectivity with the pandemic proved to be a very high challenge or difficult challenge. So for example, the network was during the pandemic, the network also became not only this tool for people from different places to connect and learn about early childhood, but also the place where our own teachers from AI2 centers will have different information and ideas and experiences to share with their children during their virtual classes, but also to give to parents so that parents could also accompany children in their homes. So there's a lot of ideas that where people were using. And of course, there were not necessarily every family would have connectivity or the access to a smartphone to be able to access the network. So what was very interesting in here was the fact that teachers would then download the contents and then send them through WhatsApp to the parents, or even to those who didn't even have a phone, then print it out and give them out printed to the parents. So that was a really good tool to help them during the pandemic. And also, for example, because of connectivity issues in very far away territories as Chocó in Colombia, there were organizations, there was specifically one organization who bought a course for their teachers, this course that I was telling you about, how to potentiate the role of the teacher from the distance. And the teachers teachers did not necessarily have internet access. So there was a strategy that they developed where they would meet in a point in a community local space where they did have connectivity, and they formed study groups to develop the course. So what was interesting about this is that this tool that was initially developed for the self-management of your own knowledge, because it's something that each a person does on their own, ended up being a tool that a group of teachers, or different group of teachers, because we're talking about 200 people, managed to use in order to also build on their interaction and teamwork. So that was amazing. Thank you, Mari. Of course, there has been lots of learnings in this process. I have to agree with almost everything that Tracey just said before. But mainly, yes, start with the needs and problems of your customers. And that really requires time. And that really requires for you to listen to what your internal and external customers really need, and not what you think they need. And that's, I think, the first thing that you need to be very aware of, that you really need to do your market research, not only to understand competition, but especially to understand the needs of those that you are going to serve. Use the tools that are already available. There are hundreds of tools that are already being developed. So for example, with Connect2, we decided to go with this customized software that, of course, very easily got outdated. And because it was something that we developed on our own, it was very costly to update it. And so we kept on going and using it. And then we got to a point where we really needed to just put more money and more resources and time and effort to transform it. So we're building it up again, or rebuilding it, but this time using tools that are already there on the market, such as, for example, that's what we did with the AI2 network. The AI2 network is a customized network, but we used 4 different tools that were already on the market, and we just articulated them all together. So that was easier. And of course, you just pay this annual fee, and there are a lot of tools that are for free as well, that also people already know how to use. So if, for example, you need to just create a group where people are going to interact about a specific subject, there are lots of Facebook groups. If you need to use to, somehow easily communicate every day with your target groups, there's already WhatsApp. So tools that are already out there that are free and that people are used to be using. Embrace technology without compromising values. I think this is very important because we're not, as Tracey also mentioned, because as we're not tech companies, we it's really easy to get off track. So for example, with the AI2 network, when we started to think about contents that we could put up there for children, we had to be very careful that these were not only contents to entertain children, but also contents that will promote creativity in children, that will allow children to express, I don't know, their own views, for example. So create a pedagogical tool for a story that they can download and create their own version. So things like that, to not compromise your own values or organization values. Technology, as Tracey and Marielida have said before, gives you a lot of data. You need to use it, and to use it means to understand it, to really analyze it. And that usually means also that you need to hire the right people to do so, because you don't necessarily have it in your team, like all the abilities that you need to really understand what the data is showing you, and how to, of course, you need people to also develop the tools and everything, but not only to develop the tools, but also to understand the data. And build on technology to integrate your operations. So as Marielida was just showing you a few minutes ago, how to really use, because all the data is going to help you not only in the first initial process that you thought your data was going to help, but other processes in the organization. So definitely try and integrate your operation around technology. What could we have done differently? There are mainly 3 things. First of all, definitely train people, employees, teachers, train people, train users prior to having the platform. might have been a very good idea for us, especially with all the challenges that represented for us. Definitely to do more profound marketing research in order to better understand the needs and also what is already out there, which connects with the third thing that I'm going to say, and it's rely more on partnerships to develop new tools instead of doing it all on yourself. I mean, innovation does not necessarily mean start from scratch or doing it on your own. There's a lot of companies out there who have already developed different tools or who have already mastered different processes, and by partnering with them, definitely there's an opportunity to continue growing. Maria, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so still, as Tracey said again, we are still learning and there's so much to be done. There's a very, very wide way for us to continue walking. We need to, especially with the things that we currently have, we need to continue improving the digital user experience. That's the most important thing for us to really promote engagement, to really have users use what you're giving them. That's the most important thing, definitely. Definitely to do digital consumer marketing in a very proper way and continuously. We really need to understand those needs of our market, and then we're able to really come up with solutions that might work for them. The digital and technological presence for ecosystem transformation, definitely. This is something that if we understand technology as a tool and as a tool that we're able to use to connect organizations, to connect different actors, to really promote progress, then we can use it in so many different ways. So definitely use digital and technological presence for transforming ecosystems, and also digital and technological content production. This takes a lot of time and effort, and content that you produce takes much more time to be produced than the time that the user takes to consume it. And as long as you're giving them a feed of content, they're always going to want more. So that takes a lot of effort and time and resources as well. Maria, do you want to continue with the others? I've taken a lot of time.
Thank you, Neji. Thank you. I was just thinking, Neji, that what is also next for IO2 has a lot to do with what Tracey just shared. And these pedagogical tools are not only for children, it's also how we as partners learn from each other. And Grow has this recipe that we love. We are now deploying, we've been piloting for the last 2 years, the licensing model, in which some other organizations are inspired in all these educational model and using the IO2 tools. And also we are deploying this year the low-cost model. That's one of the reasons we've been talking to Tracey and learning and inspired very much by her. And we will keep knocking your door, Tracey, see how can we adapt that recipe to our own context. So there is a huge, huge potential to enhance tech teaching and the learning through digital tools, not only in the classroom, but also to promote new ways of learning. As Neji was saying, there is a lot of challenge also in the adult way of learning. And we see that this technology, even though it's not in person, it can interact with you and give you meaningful experiences and new ways of learning. Also, there is a huge potential for Connect2, for example, in which we need to enhance the way of seeing, deep down seeing what are the specific experiences that are taking place in the daily life of the children that are improving or that are triggering and accelerating their learning, because we all know that there has been huge loss of learning in these times, and we cannot just give that responsibility to the children or just, you know, accelerate to acquire different skills, but we need to give also teachers and leaders resources so they know what experiences are triggering more connections and giving children meaningful experiences. Also, digital tools for training. For example, Tracey, you said something that is always in the mind of IU2, which is quality is very poor. And we still face that huge problem. And every year you get different kind of children, different kind of families, and you know the system evolves as well. The technology needs to help us to come up with different tactics, different strategies in which we can connect and interconnect within different places remotely, and we can give feedback, engage in dialogue, and use this learning community to interact and learn. And also for the children, of course, we want to invite the children into engage in the digital technology and use different tools. The overhead projector, for example, helps us to take things into other dimension. It takes us to bring into the classroom different poetics. So tech in the classroom is important not only to optimize teachers' resources, but also to create opportunities for learning that are very beneficiary for children, and also for children in rural areas, for example, that are not easy to reach in person.
Maria Adelaida, I would like to thank you for the depth and the detail and the richness of this story. And we need to really draw this to an end, to give a little bit of time for people to address all the questions that they have for you. I think you're right in drawing the links across these two programs, and you have both spent a great deal of time, but there are in developing this process, and that is one of the learnings we've taken away from this. The other that you both talk about, you know, being very clear about the purpose of what you're doing, not just taking anything for any reason, but doing it for a deliberate reason. And you've both spoken about really embedding it into the culture and the context of what you're doing. So we would like to thank you all of you very much for sharing that and triggering the questions. And Ray, can I ask you in the brief time we have left to take us through a few of those questions. And we know that this has triggered so much thinking and so much richness of thought, and more questions are going to come up. So we really will need to find another way of dealing with all of these questions and bringing these together in a kind of case study to draw on other people's experiences too, as well as the questions you have raised. So heartfelt thanks. It's been really, really wonderful listening to this. Ray.
Yes, it has been wonderful. I see kind of three themes in questions. One is about how do you use technology to build and sustain relationships, whether it's relationships with your teachers, relationships with the families, and so on. The other question that has come up a lot is how do you deal with areas where there is low connectivity or people don't have access to technology in their homes, whether that is computers or laptops, tablets or even phones. And the third one is what's your strategy? Tracey talked a bit about this, but I didn't hear from AIO2 about this, is what strategies do you have for financial sustainability and maintain to grow? Because both of you have very strong ambitions about making your technology available to the world. Pick one of those questions to answer. Whether it's Tracey, you want to go first?
How do you solve the low connectivity where people don't have devices, tablets,
Okay.
don't use technology would be my answer. You know, it's a unicorn. It's a very tough challenge. And I think the best advice we got at some point is the key here is, you know, you can build, there's brilliant technology out there. What makes something stick? What makes something stick? Why did one app make it to the end and it has gazillion amount of users and another one didn't? And I think you've got to get back to the behavioral science of what makes people use things. We could all do a degree in anything we wanted to do a degree on with all the free resources that are out there. Why don't we? And I think the answer to that really comes to, if you're going to build technology, start with something that somebody already does, to try and bridge the technology gap and ask individuals to try something new that isn't part of their daily lives is like a double whammy. If you can find the hook that she is already using technology for, already doing in her life, and you can replace that pain point with something that makes her life better, you're more likely to get traction.
Thank you.
But low connectivity data devices are a challenge. We built an online offline solution. So we built things that take a lot of time that I need to use daily, could be done in offline mode, and then uploaded when I got to interconnectivity areas. And that seemed to, you know, it's a, when do I need connectivity? When don't I need connectivity? Making sure you don't time out because the connectivity is unstable, because that just irritates and frustrates people. I've done work and then it's lost. You know, think about all those challenges in low connectivity environments. The cost of data we're solving through a reverse billing strategy. So in South Africa, there's a company that has contracts with all our network providers, and you can actually pay for the data costs on behalf of your users. And we're using that for parts of the system. We know that, you know, if someone's making a choice between, do I spend money on data to do this or buy food for my family, we know what's going to win, and therefore to, you know, build that as a cost into your model if you want your system to stick.
Thank
Tracey,
you, Tracey. Whoops.
Sorry, thank you, Tracey. You remind me of other people that have started with a really more modern technology and then realized that, you know, don't use TV, go back to radio, or don't use a smartphone, go back to another thing. And so that was a really useful piece of thinking there. Thank you. But a lot of people are interested in both your apps and both of the systems that you're using. So it would be really helpful. Aitu link is there in the chat. Tracey, could you put a link in the chat too, that people could maybe reach out to you to connect up with your app, perhaps? That'd be great. Sorry.
I'll do that, and I'll put my email address in there as well.
Yeah.
I just want to also add that Mobile Creche has written a post-it that says, we're looking for any app through which we can capture attendance of children, height, weight, illness, immunization. So if you have an idea around that, please either put it in the chat or add a sticky to the Jamboard. We really don't have time to talk about it. So I just want to raise that for folks.
Great. Great, and if you allow me, I will very quickly clarify how is our strategy for financial sustainability. we have this business model that is very comprehensive, and through the 3 business lines, we have a portfolio of services. So in the digital, for example, we offer courses in which people can register and pay for engage in an online learning. And also we have all these projects aimed to have systemic change, consultancies, develop capacities in others, and also the private centers in which we give service to high income and middle income families. So when you combine these 3, then you have the financial sustainability of IO2.
And if I may address the question about technology and how to build relationships around it. I think technology, the way I see it, technology is another channel. It's a channel to contact and to communicate and to connect with people, and it's a channel that allows you to do amazing things. It's a channel that allows you to reach people that otherwise you might not have been able to reach in an easy way or with limited resources. You need to promote, of course, interaction between users. That's what you need to focus on, because technology allows for a lot of peer learning, and that's amazing. And one of the most important things, I think, is people are using technologies, and the people who are not using it, they want to use it. So there's a huge opportunity there for developing partnerships to reach out more people, to advocate, to have more people have connectivity. So there's a lot of work to be done in that sense, but definitely a channel that allows you to do a lot of amazing things that you otherwise may have not been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. Are we going over to Jasmine now?
Good. Well, I was just wanted to wrap up the webinar and just to say a huge, incredible thank you to Maria, Nehi, and Tracey for sharing your stories. And thank you, Ray and Penny, for your facilitation, and also Jake for doing the live interpretation. So as you know, the webinar is recorded. So share this afterwards in an email with the link to it, and then also resources that were shared on this webinar. We'll find a way to figure out how to share out the questions that were asked both before and during the webinar itself. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. And just a couple quick announcements we have a couple upcoming webinars. So on Thursday, February 17th, thank you. As you know, Dr. Aisha Yousafzai will discuss learnings from a survey that she did around COVID-19 and the impacts on early childhood development. And then also 2 organizations will be sharing their reflections who have implemented the survey. So I'm just putting the registration link in the chat here if you would like to register. And then also on Wednesday, March 16th, we'll be hosting a 3-hour workshop to look at how organizations are integrating socio-emotional learning and well-being into their programming. So I'll send more details about this in an email to come, but save the dates if this is something that would be interesting to you. And finally, we have a new set of case profiles that was just recently published on innovators working to decolonize early childhood development programming, engage with fathers, and promotes gender equality. I think the Canal Canoa team is on the call today. They're one of the teams that were profiled. And I'm also putting that into the chat and for the link so you can check that out. And this is to the Saving Brains Learning website where we put all the resources and webinar recordings. So if you're on there, check out other things on it as well. But yeah, that's it. I think I managed to do that in 2 minutes. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Great seeing all of you and having you on the call.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Jasmine.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Ray, Jasmine, Tracy, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll miss our chats. Bye. We'll have
Thank
to
you,
find
everyone.
another excuse to meet.
Penny. Thank you
Thank
all.
you very much.